I mean, according to the newspapers, he had just under half a minute before he was restrained. Half a minute with a knife, you can do a lot. And I mean, I keep trying to count the number of injuries and I keep getting different results, but I think somewhere around 14, 15 different injuries to different parts of my body. Obviously, the most serious being the wound to the eye. But fortunately, he missed a lot of places which would have been immediately fatal. Like, although there was a big cut across my neck, he didn't get the artery. And although there were 3 injuries to my torso, he didn't reach the heart. And so, in that sense, that was that was a piece of good fortune in the middle of a very unpleasant experience.
Did you at any point, I mean, I know you've spoken about being conscious and then half conscious. Did you at any point feel like, yes, this is the moment that I'm facing death?
Yes, I quite clearly thought that. I was aware of lying on the floor in a quite substantial lake of blood, and it would have been foolish not to think so. And I clearly remember thinking that this was about to be the end, and unfortunately, I was wrong.
You've often spoken about, or you have spoken about, not wanting to be defined by this fatwa that was issued so long ago and living your life based on that, and that's why you were so freely, operating without security. Have you now been forced back into that kind of security bubble?
I mean, not completely, but somewhat. Yeah. I mean, I think now we have to be more careful than before, and so. Yeah, I don't want to talk about details of security on television, but we're aware of it, and we have arranged for security, which we use when it seems sensible.
I want to ask you about the issue of fanaticism, extremism. I mean, how do we contend with it? Especially in such a polarized world.
Well, you contend with it by not giving into it, many fanatical groups in the Islamic world are the people they oppress most are the Muslims. That's what's certainly true about the rule of the Ayatollahs in Iran, and it's true about the rule of the Taliban in Afghanistan, and so on. So the first people who are the victims of fanaticism are ordinary members of the same faith group. So we need to act together to destroy this thing. But don't ask me how. I'm just a storyteller.
You talk a lot in your book about, or one of the themes is time, and the fact that you say why now? Why this moment?
Yeah, it did feel like a kind of almost anachronistic event. Something coming out of the past. Because I've been living in New York City since the year 2000, so that's a long time. And during that time, I've done, I would say hundreds of public events, lectures, readings, literary festivals, the whole spectrum of things that writers are asked to do, and there's never been a shadow or a hint of trouble before. There's just been perfectly ordinary, pleasant events. So this did come out of the blue, and it is very strange because this attacker was only 24 years old when he did this, which means he wasn't even alive at the time of the original threat. But he does seem to have been a kind of loner who had spent several years locked up in his mother's basement apartment, basically watching YouTube, and somewhere along that line decided to stage this attack. It is somewhat a mystery because he had no previous record. He had no record of criminal activity. He was, as far as I know, he was not on any terrorism watch list. He just came out of left field, as they say.
I mean, did you write this book now because you won't be silenced, because you continue to fight for and believe in freedom of expression?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And also, I'm a writer. It's what I do. And if something of this kind of significance happens in a writer's life, it's not unnatural that the writer should want to tackle it, to deal with it. For me, it felt like a way of regaining control of the narrative, and to be able to say to myself, this isn't just something happening to me. This is something that I'm dealing with in my way. And the book is that. The book is my way of doing that.
Yet there are those who aren't able to have some semblance of control back. I want to mention, 3 years ago, a teacher from a school by the name of Batley Grammar School in West Yorkshire, he was forced into hiding after a religious studies class he gave led to protests by Muslim parents and then death threats. He remains in hiding. I mean, it very much goes to the point that you're making, the fact that people are silenced, there's misunderstandings, and then there are people like him at a school who can't return and remains in hiding, all of those freedoms taken away.
Yes, that's terrible. I mean, I have some experience of that kind of life, and it's disgraceful that it should be allowed to happen in what's supposed to be a free country.
On the other hand, a Muslim student this week in the UK lost a legal challenge against a school in North London because the student wanted to pray and have a prayer ritual. And the school basically said, we're a secular school, so we're not going to allow that. Half the students in that school, about 700 students, half of them are Muslims. I mean, it goes back to your other point, doesn't it, about sort of being able to freely express yourself. And should those issues around schools preventing people from being able to pray still apply, when I guess, it is part of those students and their identity?
I don't know. My view is that school is a place where you get educated and mosques are places where you go to pray. And you can't turn one into the other. Yeah,
Salman Rushdie, we're coming to the end of our interview, but I wondered if you did have a message for young people, given this attacker was someone young. You spoke about the fact that he wasn't born when that fatwa was issued, and young people are getting radicalized, especially on the internet, whether you had a message for them.
Well, just, Islam historically has not been like this. What's happened in recent decades is the spread of particular fanatical versions of Islam. In the Sunni faith, the Wahhabi cult being spread from Saudi Arabia, and in the Shia faith, the influence of the Ayatollahs in Iran. Indian Islam, which I grew up in, was much more Sufi-influenced, mystical, and entirely peaceful. And I just recommend that people try and study a bit more widely into the more traditional forms of Islam, which don't have this interest in violence.
Salman Rushdie, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.